guys, I'm the Fat Panda. I'm the admin of the WPF B-league, and here today I'm going to be going over my personal preseason power rankings for the B-league draft. I'm going to be going through team by team, pointing out a few things that interest me, good and bad, things that I think stand out one way or the other, and just to see where I think these teams sit before we get to battling and I see how good various coaches are. Because I don't know pretty much all the coaches in our B-league. Most are new recruits, so it'll be very interesting to see how drafting skills that I see translate to actual battle skills. I'm just going to go team by team, starting with the top, at least as far as I see, and then at the very end we will have a full ranking that I'm going to be interested in comparing week by week, seeing how close I am at the very end, seeing who I was right on, who I was wrong on. I think it'll be fairly interesting. So I'm going to just start right here with my number one team. This is the team I think will be probably near the top just about every single week. They seem to be pretty darn good. And it is going to be the Cherrygrove Charizards I have as the number one team. I'm looking at this team, and you can see order of picks from the top left to the bottom right are going to be the pick order. On the bottom right, I just have a full list. The Pokemon that are highlighted in the red are the Z Captains. And only Z Captain rules we have right now for this season is that they can't be from the same tier. So the Cherrygrove Charizards have their Z Captains as Tornadus Therian, Tier 1, and Komodo, Tier 2. I just look at this team and I have the hardest time even really finding a single weakness. Everything just looks perfect. You could take this team and there is actually almost a completely legitimate OU ladder team right here. It's honestly insane. The synergy between Tapu Bulu, Toxapex, Scizor, and Tornadus. You've got a couple pretty darn good rockers. You've got Crocodile. You've got Steelix. You have some really good sweeping potential with Komodo and Mega Scizor. There's the good support mons that are always needed for these kind of draft leagues. Miltank can be a fantastic support mon. Toxapex can be a fantastic support mon. I don't really have anything bad to say about this team. Even the low tier picks. Barbaracle has the ability to come out of nowhere and easily steal a game after one shell smash. All it takes is to not prep for it and you've probably lost to it. The only Pokemon here I don't really feel is Magmortar. I don't think it's a particularly good fire type, but if you're in the market for a fire and it's a late round pick, which it was second to last round, there's not going to be a lot left. It resists the attacks that are going to be going at Scizor. It resists the attacks that are going to be going at Komodo. It'll have a place. It won't be the start of the team. It may not even survive the entire season. But it'll do work if it comes. It's just probably the least interesting piece. But if the least interesting thing you have on your team is a Magmortar, you have a fantastic draft. And there's just really nothing I can say about it that is going to be bad. This team is amazing. I fully expect this team, if the coach's battling skills are nearly as good as his drafting skills, he'll be in the playoffs. He'll be a contender for the finale. I can't wait to see where this team goes. The next team I have on this list, number 2, the Sacramento Kingler. I really like how the top picks of this team kind of just work well together. You've got Landorus, which slipped down to almost a mid-round pick, I believe, in the first round. You've got Latios. Those two form a really strong offensive, an offensive core. They can even be defensive. They're both weak to ice, but they both have fantastic support moves as well with rocks and deep fog and all sorts of little tricks like Thunder Wave and whatnot. Vaporeon is just a fantastic all-around support mon. It'll be really well balanced to support the Latios and the Landorus. And You may see it sneaking down there, but there is a Mimikyu. This team is one of the few teams that managed to snag 3 Tier 1 picks because they chose a low tier Mega. In this case, Audino. Audino Mega isn't, nearly a powerhouse or anything. That's why it is a Tier 4 Mega. It gives you a whole extra 80 points for picking it. But it is a good cleric. It's, a really fat mod. It may not be killing things by any means, but if all you're looking for is something to cleric once in a while, and you're going to use the rest of the team to really be the meat for most of your battles, this is a pretty good Mega to choose. It can come from time to time if there's a matchup that it looks good. If there isn't a matchup that looks good, he's got Vaporeon to do basically the same things, but with the Vaporeon instead, you've still got all these Tier 1 and Tier 2 picks that are going to be doing the real work. So, taking something low that'll be useful once in a while really allowed the Sacramento Kingler to grab a whole bunch of really strong Pokemon as well. You've got Trapping with Magnezone. You've got good offensive potential with Salazzle. You've got some really good niche support / offensive mons with Scrafty and the Acelgor. Ludicolo looks kind of weird on this team, but this coach is in a division with a team that drafted Heavy Rain, and you can't counter Rain much better than much better than Ludicolo. That is about a top tier counter for Rain, so I expect to see that at least twice this season, and those 2 times it comes, it'll probably do a heck of a lot of work. There's not really a lot I could say bad about this team. The one thing that really does kind of stick out to me is, as far as I'm aware, he only has 1 Pokemon that can use Stealth Rocks, and that is the Landorus Therian. I feel like I see hazards quite a bit less in the leagues I've been watching, but it's still something that's very important to have, or at least be able to threaten. And you really don't want to have to bring rocks on Landorus every single week. It'll get old fast. It doesn't feel good when you have all these different options the Landorus can run to have to bring the rocks on it almost every week. I wouldn't be surprised if this coach ended up dropping one of the mons he thinks is doing the least for something else that can at least run rocks from time to time to kind of take that load off of Landorus. Other option is, the other kind of thing I see about this team is that he's got 3, it looks like, hazard removers. Cryogonal isn't particularly good, but it's got access to Rapid Spin. It'll have to come to time with Rapid Spin, because other than that, it's once again Landorus or Latios that can be running Defog. Both mons, which obviously can easily run it, but you definitely don't want to have to run it every single week on them. They have so many other options they can run. It's why they're such good Tier 1 Pokemon. It wouldn't, it's going to be it's probably nothing they're going to address because they've got 3 options to remove hazards, but it'll feel bad, I'm sure, in prep a couple times this season where they have to run Defog or something, and they really don't want to be using that move slot for it. But other than that, this team is fantastic. There's not a lot else I can say about it. It just looks great. Going on to my number 3 in the power rankings is the Motherland Mawile. They drafted some insane wall-breaking potential with the Hoopa Unbound and the Mega Mawile. There are no walls that are going to be safe for this team. They just, you won't be able to survive these sheer offensive onslaught of a Hoopa, a regular Force Kyurem, but it's got the Z move, Mega Mawile. You've got Golisopod, which, it's got a weird ability. It's a little slow, but it's got a really good attack stat. First impression, Leech Life. I think it even gets Sword Stance. It's got a whole lot going for it. He's got webs to support these kind of slower breakers so that they can even take out the faster sweeping mons. There's some good meat and bulk in this team as well with Arcanine and Swampert. Only thing I really see with this team is if there is something that is, they prep wrong or something and they come up against a team that's going to be a little fatter and they can't actually break it with what they've brought, or they make a mistake and lose, like Hoopa early to a surprise U-turn or something. I don't think this team is terribly well positioned for a long, drawn-out battle. You've only really got Arcanine for things that can heal themselves. I guess Kyurem can, but it's not often going to be a fat mon that comes on. Now, I don't expect there to be many long battles for this coach with their hyper offensive wall breaking team, but if they do come across something in that scenario, that's where I could see them losing a little bit. It's just, I don't see it particularly happening, but if it does, that's their weakness. You have to be able to wall their breakers or take them out, because once those wall breakers are hurt or gone, the rest of the team will kind of fall in short order, I think, just because that's where you can start to wear it out once they're gone. Other than that, not a lot I can say. This looks like a terrifying team. Webs, incredible offense, just enough support to make it work. It'll be a team that is easily pushing for the playoffs, I imagine. My number 4 team, the Miami Dinos. They have such a good with those first 3 picks. They have a steel, they have a dragon, they have a fairy, they're top quality of all 3. I mean, that right there screams, I'm gonna win me some games. On top of that, they added a fantastic Weber and Araquanid. Doesn't even have to be, it can run sticky webs. It's known for that because sticky webs is so rare. But you can easily also just slap a band on it and liquidate half a team to death. No problem. On top of that, they've got basically one of the just catch-all, oh crap, something set up on me, I gotta deal with that walls in Quagsire. They have anti-defog for their webs with Superior, because if you defog on a Superior, all of a sudden it has an evasion boost. With the contrary ability, spam a couple Leaf Storms, all of a sudden you got something that's +4 attack, +1 evasion, and you probably just lost the match. Diggersby was drafted. It takes some super advantage of those webs. It'll just hit super hard with that huge power ability. Rotom, good support mon, actually pairs pretty darn well with that Quagsire, and has the ability to defog if something does come on its side. It can burn, it can scarf and trick pretty well to cripple any potential walls that are giving his offensive core trouble. Lycanroc, good rocker. Only thing that feels a little off about this team is if you come across something like, let's say Mega Beedrill, for example. If it gets up a Swords Dance and your Celesteal is a little weakened, you're all of a sudden in serious trouble. There's no real speed. There's only a little bit of priority with Diggersby and Cellrock from Lycanroc. I think a really fast setup sweeper might start to cause this team trouble, or even a slower one, but if it's got Dragon Dance or Quiver Dance, if it's something you'll have to see in prep or whatnot, because otherwise it'll catch this team by surprise, might let it fall. Something I might have liked to see addressed with its lower tier picks. The tier 5's Charizard is a little odd of a pick. Shedinja is one of those you have to prep for me every week. Otherwise, I'm just going to beat Imons. I don't know if it will have the effect he's looking for, but I do expect basically every single team to be prepped for Shedinja, whether by accident or not. So hey, that might just be worth the 40 points it took to draft it. And if it's not, small cost, I guess, when the rest of your team is looking as threatening as it does. Alright, next team I'm looking at for number 5 is the Philadelphia Pangoros. Earlier I mentioned that someone drafted a Ludicolo just to counter rain. Well, you're looking at that rain. And not only is it a rain team, holy cow, he drafted Tapu Koko and Halucha. This team, when it's going to be going fast. It's got Swift Swim, it's got Unburden, and it's got the Fat to support that when something goes wrong with Goodra, with Pelipper. Dummies or Tentacruel can certainly be pretty fat with their Assault Vest or just natural bulk. This team does look pretty darn good. I mean, those are some crazy cores. Pelipper, Swampert, Lucha, Coco. Those right there are going to overwhelm some opponents by themselves this entire season and win games by themselves. The only real problem I see with this team is it's something that does happen with a lot of rain teams. This team right here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 water types. Like, water in rain, really, really strong. But when half your team is one type, that's kind of what starts to worry me. Something like Golduck, I don't necessarily know how good of a pick that was when you already have water types that do basically everything it could do already. Um, it's special. Most of the other waters are the offensive ones are going to be physical. I don't know if that's enough to be worth it. Maybe it'll win a game and I'll be, just laughed out of town. Who knows? Other than that, I mean, Coco Lucha is terrifying. Bisharp will be great. It does prevent some hazard removal. If you're threatening to come in on Defog, give a free +2 boost. That would be terrifying for the opponent. Toxicroak has dry skin. I don't know if it's as good as it used to be since rain will end eventually, but not too hard to set up a Swords Dance or sub and focus punch. It's got certainly quite a few options. Goodra, Delmies, all around good tanks. Delmies can, of course, remove hazards with Tentacruel as well. Overall, this is a very strong team. I think, the only real weakness is probably the fact that he simply has 5 water types. That's just a lot of water. That's a lot of redundancy for opponents to prep for. But the sheer strength of, his combos there, I think that's enough. There shouldn't be any problem winning quite a few matches. At number 6, I have the Michigan Diamond Storm. This team has two of the first picks were some of the most terrifying things you could possibly see on the opposing team. Kyurem Black got a Z move. Kartana, crazy offensive threat. Can run Band, can run Scarf, run Swords Dance. Can even run Timid with Swords Dance, so it gets the speed boost and just wins right there. That's, just some insane potential. That right there is, top half team, regardless looking at the rest of what they've got. The rest of what they got, still pretty darn good. I love Necrozma. I think it's one of the most underrated tier 2 mons. I think it should be going right away almost every single draft. It can sweep, it can set up, it can be a defensive mon. It's got rocks, it's got just about anything you want. Comfey, it has the ability to Calm Mind with the silly Draining Kiss triage combo. Can come out of nowhere and just win a match. It's basically what Klefki wishes it could do. It's got the priority on the offense instead of the defense, which is fantastic for it. He's got some pretty good, rockers. He's got Nidoking can run rocks. He's got Regirock can run rocks. The weird thing about his team, the one thing I don't particularly like, is that for opposing hazard setters, he's got weird options. 2 Magic Bounce users means he may not see hazards or status quite as much because it's so easy to accidentally hurt yourself when you're against Mega Absol and Xatu. But if something sticks, he doesn't have a lot of ways to actually remove the hazards or the sticky webs if they do get set up. Comfey gets Defog, it doesn't really usually want to run it. Xatu gets Defog, it'll probably run it, but it's not strong enough on its own, I feel, especially when compared to the rest of the team, to want to come so many weeks. I guess Kartana can run Defog. I usually do on choice sets, just in lieu of a 4th move, just in case something crazy happens. But once again, it doesn't want to ever actually have to have Defog on its set. I think that's probably one of the few weaknesses this team has, because otherwise, the top picks are truly top picks. It's the cream of the crop for various tiers. Sinful that I think he got Necrozma in round 4. There's no reason it should have ever gone that far, but since it did, no reason not to take it. Number 7, Gotham Darkrai. This team has a great, you can see it right there, Regenerator Core, Tangrowth, Alomomola. It's even got Umbreon down there. That's a lot of really good, really consistent fat. And, he doesn't need to bring all 3. He can bring 2. He can bring a 1. And it'll provide fantastic pivots for his other crazy offensive potential mons. Mega Gyarados, Swellow, those 2 right there can absolutely take over games. Spec Swellow blows through anything that doesn't resist Boom Burst. Mega Gyarados blows through just about everything as it is. He's even got Cloyster for Shell Smash. He's got Raikou, which can run some Calm Mind sets. Tornadus can run bulk up, rest Chesto, as we saw in the finals last season to surprise an opponent. He's got some pretty good momentum mons with Raikou, with Primeape, with Jirachi. There's really not much this team cannot do. The only real problem I see with this team is outside of the Swellow, not a lot of mons on this team hit super hard before they set up. They're going to be teams with Haze or teams with Unaware that this team might have trouble with. If you lose that Swellow, all of a sudden you may not be able to break a Quagsire, or you may not be able to break a Clefable, something like that. Could really cause some problems for this team. It does not really have any phasing that I see. I mean, there's some Dragon Tail in there, but not a lot. So something like that may be able to set up, start getting fatter, and then it's just the end of the day, and this team is lost. But the sheer amount of momentum, plus setup, plus, you know, crazy defenses, it's all right. This team's going to win a bunch of games, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see it in the playoffs. At number 8, I have the Wyong washing machines. This is, as you can see, a very fat team. Mega Venusaur, Rotom Wash, Skarmory, Muck, Blissey, Palossand, Hitmontop. There are a lot of really fat mons that are going to take a lot of hits and respond with status, respond with hazards. This is going to be a slow usual team. Now, even though there's all that fat, the offensive ones that you do see are going to hit like trucks. Haxorus, Darmanitan, they all have incredibly high attack. Azelf can hit fairly hard if it has to as well. The only downside is that of the offensive mons that you see, they are all somewhat slow. Now, Azelf is super fast. It's got like 115 or 125 speed, but the true sweeping is going to be done by Darmanitan. It's going to be done by Haxorus. That's why you see that Rabombi there. Rabombi will be able to set webs if he thinks he's going to need it for his mons to sweep, and hopefully that does enough. You know, that is one thing that kind of worries me. Rabombi is a very frail web setter. I mean, most are. You can't all have a Araquanid. But, you know, if it does set webs and die, if the webs get defogged, all of a sudden you need that Dragon Dance from Haxorus instead of Swords Dance, or you need your Darmanitan of a Scarf instead of a Life Orb or a Choice Band, because then you're not going to have, you know, the speed you need to get through, and you're going to have to rely on your walls to kind of chip away at your opponent. Now, that is going to work. You know, those defenses that you see there, that is going to work several weeks. He's just going to, you know, something's not going to be able to break through the team that he brings. But there are going to be other weeks where something sets up a Swords Dance or a Bulk Up and just kind of plows through him because, you know, he doesn't have the speed necessary to compete with things like Tapu Koko or, I mean, really anything that's got Dragon Dance or any base 100 that's got like Swords Dance or Nasty Plot. All of a sudden he's going to be in a serious amount of trouble. But the defense, I think the defense is strong enough. It's going to get him through the day with most of his matches. Next, I have at number 9 the Seattle Celebi. The first thing that stuck out to me, you got a primo Sandcore there. Tyranitar, Excadrill. That right there is going to require a significant amount of attention from your opponents. On top of that, Lopunny is actually surprisingly good with a Sandcore because it provides speed outside of sand, and it really likes the sand itself because that chips away at the opponent, and that way, you know, Lopunny doesn't have a true setup move. It's got Power Up Punch, which is usually enough, but a lot of Lopunnies have to two-hit KO their opponents. With the sand chip throughout the match, you're going to find Lopunny getting in there earlier in a match than it normally would because its opponents are going to get weaker and weaker. It's a really good pick with sand. Other than that, I think there are, you know, this is a pretty dang offensive team. Not a lot of things here are looking to take a hit. You've got Gengar, hits hard, still pretty frail. Typhlosion often relies on Eruption, which means it can't get hurt. Eruptions does seem like kind of a nombo with Tyranitar. You know, the sand is going to really hurt your own eruptions. But if you either don't have sand that week, or if you can play around that and get Typhlosion out without the sand out, those eruptions are really going to hurt. Venomoth, it's actually a surprisingly good Quiver Dance user. It'll miss this having a Z move this season, but Tinted Lands, Bug Buzzes are going to certainly hit like a truck. It's got Sleep Powder. It might find an edge in a couple matches and just set up and win this season. This is another one of those super offensive teams. There isn't a lot of support here. You know, Whimsicott can support, but it's not terribly bulky. Blastoise is often a fairly defensive mon, but it doesn't have any recovery. I wouldn't be surprised to see that Duosion you see down there come fairly often with either Magic Coat or Regenerator and Eviolite and try to take a few hits. It does have some offense, so it's not terrible. But if that and Blastoise are what you're looking to defend with, you're in for some pretty short matches because you're going to have to kill your opponent because they're going to be killing you pretty quick. Now, thankfully, with Lopunny and Excadrill and Gengar and Typhlosion, you're going to be killing your opponent pretty dang fast too. That's just the one thing that I noticed where I'm a little worried, but Hyper Offense is certainly a valid playstyle, and they're going to be very short matches for Seattle. He's going to win a bunch, he's going to lose some because of it, and that's just simply how it is. At number 10, I have the Auckland Articuno. With Auckland, I see Ninetales Alola, and I see a few mons that can take pretty decent advantage of that Aurora Veil. You've got Calm Mind Latias, Swords Dance Scissor, you've got Agility Metagross, which really likes Veil because then you can run Weakness Policy and definitely not worry about getting KO'd. Houndoom has 115 speed, so if you get him the chance to set up that nasty plot with the Veil, he's going to be killing a bunch of things. He's also got Smeargle there, which can do all sorts of nasty stuff. It's got Webs, it's got Sleep, it's got Destiny Bond, Memento, it's got basically whatever the heck you want. There are going to be a bunch of times this season, I bet, where you see Light Clay, Light Screen with Sacrificial Ninetales. It goes straight into Smeargle, sacrifices itself, goes straight into whatever setup sweeper he's designated that week, and he just wins the match. It's a very kind of combo-y team because if you don't have the Hail, there's some pretty good picks. You got Scissor, you've got Latias. There's a bunch of stuff you can do, but you don't have the setup that sometimes is necessary to get through a match. Let's see. You see on the bottom there, he's got Size-Patoach, he's got Swanna. Both of those picks look to me like counter picks for Philadelphia's team from earlier because he is also in the division with Rain, so he had to find a way to deal with that. I like Size-Patoach. Swanna, I'm very curious to see how he uses it, but I think they're both pretty good. I could even see Houndoom trying to come in those matches simply because it likes Sunny Day with Solar Power. If you can find a way to cancel out the rain, get a Sunny Day up, it'd be very difficult for his opponent to get through. Now, in that specific case, he's got a Pelipper, which kind of makes it redundant, but I would love to see potential Sun at some point used in this team. A little weird with Ninetales, but I would just, Houndoom with Solar Power blows his opponents apart. I'd like to see him at least have a chance at that. Otherwise, yeah, I love Ninetales. I love the Webs possibility along with other shenanigans that Smeargle can do. I think you kind of need them, otherwise this team might fall flat at times. But there are some truly strong top picks there, Latias, Scissor, Incineroar, Mamoswine. I think they'll do enough work most weeks to kind of make up for some of the other things the team might not be able to do if you don't get your other setup going. At number 11, I have the Canine Tiger. I see pretty dang good with those three picks. Fire, Water, Grass Core. Tapu Fini and Heatran are top picks. Heatran, it's always got that ground weakness to worry about, but it's pretty easy to draft around that when you've got it early. He's got Gliscor, he's got Crobat. He's not particularly worried about the ground weakness. Mega Sceptile, interesting Mega, but it is a decent grass type. It's got, it doesn't have great setup, but it hits pretty hard to start with. It's got decent speed. It'll do just fine. Even with that firewater grass, he's got the firewater grass with the fairy dragon steel, all in the same package. So he's got, you know, he basically doubled down and found the core that hits all the right buttons at the same time. On top of that, he did get the one Pokemon that you hate to see the most when you're prepping, and that is Ditto. Ditto, you have to pay attention for it every single week that you're against it, because if not, and you make a mistake, Ditto literally just wins the match by itself. It just takes whatever you have and wins. That's, if you're careless, it's going to cost you. Otherwise, I look at his team. The only thing that sticks out to me that I just do not like, I don't like Victory Bell. He doesn't really have any support for it. It's got a Z move. I don't really know why. I am super interested to see how he uses it. I'm going to be hopeful that I see Z Belch at least once, because I'm fairly sure it does get that. But I feel like it could have probably gone on something better. Crobat is the obvious one to me. But I pray that I am proven wrong, because I would love to see Victory Bell take some lives. Only other thing, let's see. I don't see a heck of a lot of setup on this team. You've got Calm Mind on Finny. You've got, You've got Malamar, who kind of boosts himself through his Contrary. Ditto obviously takes your opponent's boosts. But there's not a lot of, one turn and you're done setup bonds on this team. It's probably fine, because he can take the other opponent's setup bonds, but I don't know. I feel like maybe something that has Dragon Dance or Quiver Dance might have done good here instead. I think it's a pretty good team, though. I think the top of the top is pretty darn good, and the support is there, so I think it'll be just fine. At number 12, we've got the Tacoma Tyranitar. I don't know why I'm stumbling over that so hard. Not two words. Tacoma Tyranitar. Double T. Can't do it. Anyway, with the first two picks, he snagged basically the best two fairies he could find, and then he started filling it out the rest of the team. Mega Beedrill, Garchomp, Gyarados, Snorlax. Holy cow, that is a lot of offensive pressure. That's just is going to hit a lot of things really hard. But when you look at the rest of the team, while there is special offense with Espeon and Togekiss, kind of Clefable and kind of Empoleon, nothing really strikes the same fear that looking at a Garchomp or a Gyarados or a Mega Beedrill gives. I think opponents are going to be able to stack physical defense against him, and hopefully he can find a way around that. Togekiss can absolutely set up a nasty plot, or Calm Mind Clef has been a thing for ever since it's got Magikarp. Well, maybe ever since it's got the fairy typing, but it's certainly good. I guess Espeon can also run Calm Mind. So he's got it. It's just not exactly what you would think, I guess, when you're thinking special offense. Otherwise, once again, it's not the world's fastest team. Pokemon that are fast with natural power, not necessarily set up, because obviously Clef is there, might pose quite a bit of, a threat to this team. If something strong comes through and Mega Beedrill is down or didn't come this week or is already chipped away, it might be a problem. Snorlax is fat. It's got Curse. It's got just about everything you want to resist damage, but sometimes things get worn down when you're not expecting it, and you just need that fast to get through it. Scarfers don't always do the deed, but he's got a couple pretty darn good Scarf answers. All in all, not a huge weakness. I don't particularly like the double fairy pick to start, but he got a lot of good deals after that, so I think overall it's going to be a pretty good season. There's just, I don't particularly like the speed. I think he could use some more special offense. That's really all there is to it. At number 13, I've got AK's team. AK started out with a heck of a pick and Zygarde 50%, and then drafted 3 straight steals. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm actually looking at his team. He has 3 steals. He has 3 dragons. No, wait, he has 4 dragons. And does he have how many fairies? 1, 2. Oh, only 2 fairies. Dang it, didn't have triple of all 3. That's a lot of redundancy. Now, if you're gonna stack types, thank God you're gonna stack the best types. Dragon, steel, fairy. Those you can't really go wrong with it. But I feel like he could have used a little more versatility. I mean, look at those top 3s, those 3 steals. I see hazards, I see hazards, I see hazards. I see general annoyance. I don't really see power, which I feel like you really should go for powerful things to start a draft. Zygarde, obviously powerful. Keldeo, very powerful. Slurpuff can take lives without even trying. But those first 4 picks, I don't necessarily know how I feel about getting basically what are 3 defensive support mons right away. Other than that, another problem I see, and that's the reason why they're down at number 13, is hazard removal. For such a defensive start, I see Defog on Klefki, which doesn't even work against dark types, and that is something people can take advantage. And I'm assuming Noivern does get defogged, but dear God, if you're defogging Noivern, things have gone terribly wrong. Hazards are going to hit this opponent, and they are going to stick. Webs are a massive problem. Rocks, actually not so much, because he has so many resistances to rock. Toxic spikes could absolutely be a problem. Zygarde hates toxic spikes. Keldeo hates getting worn down by toxic spikes, or just regular spikes. Regular spikes are going to mess this team up, and he doesn't really have a great way to get rid of them. I hope, that's the one hope I have for this team. I hope they find a way to find something that has defog or can reliably rapid spin, because while you can set up every hazard under the sun, so can your opponents, and I don't know if this team is built to take out a hazard war. I just don't know if they can do it. So I think that's going to be the biggest struggle this team faces this season. I really hope they find a way to deal with the hazards, or if hazards just don't show up, well, that's fine too. At number 14, I have the Puget Sound Swampert. This, I think like most of us, my jaw hit the floor when the number 2 overall pick went to Marowak Alola. I love that he wants to use Marowak Alola. I enjoy the mon. I despise the fact that it went with the number 2 overall pick. I can understand trying to guarantee yourself something you really like round 2, Stack Attacka. Early, most people would say, but that's one of those mons where if you want it, you get it. Marowak Alola, I just can't get over the fact that he took it with the number 2 overall pick. There's so many things he could have gotten that would fit his overall plan and still get Marowak. You take Marowak in the 3rd round. It's super early. I would respect that. That's fantastic. Marowak in the 1st round, I just cannot get behind it. Now, looking at his team as a whole, he does have some pretty good power. He's got Azumarill, he's got Dragonite, he's got Heracross. He's going to beat things to a pulp with physical attacking prowess. Stack Attacka does the same. Especially, he's got Zergatry, he's got Celebi, he's got some pretty good special presence as well. Greninja, even though it's only Torrent, still can pack a heck of a punch, Ash Greninja with specs, it's got to get into Ash form somehow. Dark Pulses all day. It can still do that with Torrent. It just won't have the, of course, boost if it does KO something. I look at this team, and all I really see is I see a team that is built to take Trick Room to the max. You've got Uxie, Claydol, you've got Stack Attacka, all set Trick Room, I believe, quite easily. Zergatry, Marowak, Heracross, Lurantis, Azumarill, they all can easily take advantage of Trick Room because none of them are particularly fast. The one thing that is nice is that even if Trick Room fails, you do have a couple Pokemon that really can shine outside of Trick Room. Azumarill with Bellydrum, Aqua Jet, you've still got priority, speed doesn't matter. Dragonite can run Dragon Dance, it can run Extreme Speed, it can deal with the fact that Trick Room may not be up at all times. Heracross is just fat, it can KO things. Celebi and Greninja have some speed, maybe not, well, still, Greninja is fairly fast, but Celebi at base 100. Base 100 hasn't particularly been fast for about 10 years now, but it can still do the trick easily enough. You can slap Nasty Plot on it and KO a bunch of things. If Trick Room doesn't go up, though, I do think that it might be hard for him to find the time to set up with the Dragonite or the Azumarill, because the rest of his team just relies on it so heavily. Hopefully, you know, he can find a way around that, because without the Trick Room, I do get worried about the rest of the team's performance, and that's kind of how I really wish that Marowak had been anything else. Maybe not even necessarily a Trick Room on, you know, Tapu Koko or something else early, that heck, Celesteela, you know, that can just overpower things by itself. I think that is probably the biggest weakness of this draft, is that a lot of things that shouldn't have gone early normally were taken early, but then then the rest of the draft was filled out by things that don't necessarily go early anyway. So you lose out on those true high draftables. Now, of course, Marowak does get drafted quickly quite often. Just if you take it super early, you're losing out on other things you could have gotten when you then could have taken this early, but still be safe. I think the draft might have been a problem. Hopefully the coach's skill can overcome that. At number 15, I have the Beverly Hills Bibarel. This team, I see some really strong, really good mons. I see Megaladios. I see Weavile. I see Thundurus, Victini, Suicune. They're all very strong mons. The reason I have them all the way down here is simply a ton of that team is incredibly passive. Florges, while it can hit, it's usually clerical. Registeel, Avalugg, Gligar. This team, when it has to defend against something and he switches into one of these defensive mons, is going to be massive bait for other things to come in and set up on him. Or there's going to be massive, like, if you can plan that a certain thing is going to come in, it's going to cause just some significant problems. And I don't know if his good mons are good enough to make up for how passive half his team is going to feel every single week. It's just, I feel like maybe like if just Florges and Registeel had been picked, or just Florges and Gligar, and the other two had been, you know, something more offensive or something more mid-ground, it'd be fine. But when you've got four plus just super passive things, it's going to cause some real constraints on his team, and he's going to be forced to run like his entire top row and Thundurus. Like, he's going to be forced to run like four out of the 5 of those every single week, and it's going to make team building much more predictable, which will show when his opponents kind of know exactly what he's going to have, because half his team is something you basically don't have to prep for because they don't do anything. That's just, that's really why I have this team down here. There is some real good top end, but the sheer passivity of it, his bottom half, just kind of, it makes me think, I don't know how many wins they're going to get when you can kind of predict what they're going to have, basically what the style they're going to bring every single week is. That's just the problem I have here. And then rounding out the bottom, number 16, I have the Patchum Patchum. They have some super top end mons with Mew, Zapdos, Cobalion. These are very versatile mons. They can do a heck of a lot of different things, be it defense, be it offense, different even styles of offense. Mew can be physical, special. I mean, it learns basically every move in the game. Cobalion also, it's got Calm Mind, it's got Swords Dance, Rock Polish. It can hit from just about anywhere. Those are the best sea captains you probably could have asked for. But then I look at the rest of his team, and I start to see some real holes. There are a lot of mons here that are very fat and don't do a whole lot. Like, they're not even particularly fat. Dragalge, it's got adaptability, it's got a lot of bulk, but low speed, lots of weaknesses. Sylveon, it's got a lot of special bulk. It can hit really hard with Pixelate, but once again, it doesn't have a lot of physical bulk. It's got some obvious weaknesses. Vileplume doesn't hit hard. It can tank some things, but not a lot. Donphan kind of hits hard-ish, but it can't take very many hits before falling. Same with Blastoise. It can hit somewhat hard, but it doesn't have a lot of bulk. Doesn't have a lot of bulk. Can kind of hit hard, but can't, there's a lot of repeating things here that I see, and I feel like this team is going to be just run over by real speed, real setup threats over and over again, because there's just so little true threatening mons here. Like the top end, Mew, Cobalion, Zapdos, the problem with them is that they aren't even like true threatening mons. They are so versatile that it actually takes away from their top end. They can do anything. They are basically the ultimate support. But if they're the best you've got, then you don't have any true top end talent on your squad. And it's going to cause a lot of problems because I don't think the team quality is quite there. Now watch me say that, and they're going to start the season like a 5-0 win streak. But I would be surprised. I think this team should probably look into the free agency market, try to find some more specialized offensive fast mons if there's anything even really left, because there's a lot of, decent bulk, decent damage, but underwhelming mons on this team. Speed-wise too, it kind of has trouble. There's a lot of, people are going to be able to cut a lot of speed against this team because like the base 95 or what, basically like the below the base 100 to like base 80, you can cut almost all your speed. The things are going to get a lot fatter against this team because either they don't outspeed anything or they outspeed everything. There's very little middle ground. Talonflame is always going to be faster. Ninjax is always going to be faster. Having something and then having like 3 mons like the base 100 to base 108. It's just there's a lot of steps there. Like there's super fast, right in the middle, then really slow. So I think this team might need free agency, but I don't know the skill level of any of these coaches for the most part. He might be able to play with this perfectly, and I'll be eating crow in the next few weeks. I can always hope. I just hope that I'm wrong because I don't particularly see a heck of a lot here to crow about. So after going through all these teams, here is just a quick list if you'd want to refer. I've got them all listed out here. This is, of course, preseason. I don't know how strong most of these coaches actually are, so I'm looking forward to a lot of battles to see how they, how it goes in the future. I do think this is a very... I like a lot of the teams in this league. I think there's a lot of fun things that are happening, even as you start to get down near the bottom of my power rankings. I think there's still a lot of really fun things we could see. I can't wait to watch a bunch of these battles, maybe even, narrate a few if I can manage to stop spoiling myself. I know one battle has already happened. I watched it, of course, before I could even stop myself, so I'm going to have to somehow manage to stop myself watching a few battles, see if I can get them onto this channel. But here, WPF B-league, these are my preseason ratings. I can't wait to compare these to the future. This is the Fat Panda, admin of the B-league, and I am signing out for this video.